The alarm bells rang across the bridge of the UES Defiance as Captain Jake Morrison stared at the incoming transmission. The message had been intercepted from deep space, and the translation made his blood run cold. The Zeltharian Galactic Empire was coming to Earth. Jake had heard stories about the Zeltharians from the few human ships that had ventured beyond the solar system. They ruled over 12,000 star systems with an iron fist. Their war fleets could destroy entire planets in a matter of hours. No species had ever successfully resisted them for long. "Sir, we're getting more signals," said Lieutenant Ben Parker from his station. "It looks like a massive fleet heading our way." Jake walked to the main view screen and studied the data. The numbers were terrifying. Over 3,000 Zeltharian warships were approaching Earth. Each one was larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. The biggest human ship barely measured half the size of a Zeltharian scout vessel. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Chen was having an emergency meeting with the Defense Council. The room was filled with tension as military leaders from every nation gathered around the holographic display showing the approaching threat. "How long do we have?" asked General Paul Martinez, his weathered face showing concern. "Based on their current speed, about 2 weeks," Lisa replied. "Maybe less if they decide to increase velocity." The numbers on Earth's defense were not encouraging. Humanity had managed to build 200 warships over the past 50 years. Most of them were patrol vessels and light cruisers. Against 3,000 enemy ships, they stood no chance in a direct fight. Dr. Alan Brooks was working day and night in his laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains. For years, he had been developing a theoretical weapon based on space-time manipulation. The project was so secret that only a handful of people knew about it. Even now, with Earth facing destruction, Brooks wasn't sure if his device would work. "The calculations are correct," he muttered to himself as he adjusted another component. "But theory and practice are two different things." His assistant, Dr. Helen Carter, looked up from her computer terminal. "The power requirements are enormous, Alan. Even if we can make it work, we'll need to drain half the planet's energy grid." Brooks nodded grimly. "If this doesn't work, we won't need to worry about power grids anymore." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez was aboard the UES Guardian, studying the enemy fleet patterns. Something about their formation seemed familiar. Like a textbook military approach, the Zeltharians were confident. Perhaps too confident. "They're not even trying to hide their movements," she told her captain, Diana Walsh. "It's like they expect us to just surrender." Captain Walsh studied the tactical display. "Maybe that's exactly what they expect. From their perspective, we're just another primitive species to be conquered." Back on the Defiance, Jake Morrison was developing a desperate plan. He had spent hours studying every piece of information about Zeltharian military tactics. Their strength was overwhelming force, but that might also be their weakness. Big fleets were hard to maneuver quickly. "Ben, get me a connection to Admiral Chen," Jake ordered. When the communication link opened, Jake saw the strain on Lisa's face. "Jake, I hope you have good news because I don't have any." "Actually, I might have something," Jake said. "But it's going to sound crazy." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "At this point, crazy might be our only option." Jake explained his idea. Instead of trying to defend Earth directly, they would use hit-and-run tactics to guide the enemy fleet into a specific formation. It would require perfect timing and coordination from every human ship. "You want to herd them like cattle?" Lisa asked, incredulous. "Something like that," Jake replied. "Dr. Brooks has been working on a secret weapon. But it only works if we can get the enemy ships positioned exactly right." The plan was risky beyond measure. It required human forces to engage a vastly superior enemy, while appearing to retreat in panic. Every movement had to be calculated perfectly, or the entire strategy would collapse. Colonel Steve Adams received his orders with a mixture of excitement and terror. He would lead the first attack squadron directly against the Zeltharian vanguard. His 30 fighters would face over 300 enemy cruisers near Jupiter's orbit. "Remember," Jake told him over the communication channel, "you're not trying to win this engagement. You're trying to make them chase you in the right direction." Steve looked at his squadron of young pilots. Most of them had never seen real combat. Now they were being asked to fly into what looked like a suicide mission. "Listen up, people," Steve announced to his pilots. "We're going to show these aliens what human courage looks like. But more importantly, we're going to be smarter than they are." Dr. Brooks was making final adjustments to his device when Admiral Chen visited his laboratory. The machine was enormous, filling most of the underground facility with cables, generators, and strange crystalline components. "Will it work, Alan?" Lisa asked quietly. Brooks wiped sweat from his forehead. "Honestly, I don't know. The theory is sound, but we've never tested anything on this scale. If Morrison can get the enemy fleet positioned correctly, and if my calculations are right, and if we can generate enough power," he trailed off, shaking his head. "That's a lot of ifs," Lisa observed. "It's all we have," Brooks replied. As the Zeltharian fleet approached the outer edge of the solar system, their commander, War Commander Thexus, felt confident about the coming victory. His species had conquered hundreds of worlds, and this small blue planet would be no different. The human ships he could see on his scanners were pathetically small. Their weapons were primitive. Their numbers were insignificant. This would be over quickly, and then he could report another successful conquest to the Empire. What Thexus didn't know was that every human ship had been equipped with new communication systems that could coordinate their movements with split-second precision. Every pilot had studied the battle plan for weeks. Every captain understood their exact role in the larger strategy. The stage was set for the most important battle in human history. In 2 days, the Zeltharian fleet would cross into the solar system proper, and Jake Morrison's desperate gamble would begin. As Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking out at the stars, he knew that everything depended on the next few days. Either humanity would find a way to survive, or Earth would become just another conquered world in the Zeltharian Empire. The approaching storm was about to break, and only time would tell if human ingenuity could overcome impossible odds. Colonel Steve Adams checked his fighter systems one last time as his squadron approached Jupiter's orbit. Behind him, 29 other human pilots prepared for what looked like certain death. Ahead of them, 300 Zeltharian cruisers moved in perfect formation, their weapons already charging. "Remember the plan," Steve said over the radio. "We hit them hard, then run. Make it look desperate, but follow the exact retreat pattern." The Zeltharian ships were massive compared to the human fighters. Each cruiser was 10 times larger than Steve's entire squadron combined. But Jake Morrison had studied their movements for weeks. He knew exactly how they would respond to attack. Steve's fighter screamed through space toward the enemy formation. His targeting computer locked onto the lead Zeltharian cruiser. "All units, engage now." The human fighters opened fire with everything they had. Their missiles struck the alien ships, causing bright explosions across their hulls. The damage was minimal, but it got the Zeltharians' attention. "They're turning to pursue us," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from her fighter. Just like Morrison predicted. Steve smiled grimly. Phase 1 complete. Now we run. The human squadron spun around and accelerated away from Jupiter, heading toward Mars. Behind them, the Zeltharian cruisers gave chase, their formation becoming stretched out as some ships moved faster than others. On the bridge of the UES Guardian, Captain Diana Walsh watched the tactical display with nervous excitement. Steve's squadron was performing perfectly, drawing the enemy ships along the exact path that Jake Morrison had calculated. "Commander Rodriguez, how are we looking?" Diana asked. Amy Rodriguez studied her sensors carefully. "The enemy is following the predicted route. Their formation is beginning to elongate just as Morrison said it would." Diana nodded. "Good. Prepare for our part of the plan." The Guardian and 12 other human destroyers were hidden behind Europa, one of Jupiter's largest moons. Their job was to appear suddenly and attack a different part of the Zeltharian fleet, forcing them to split their forces. Meanwhile, Dr. Brooks was working frantically in his underground laboratory. The space-time manipulation device was almost ready, but the power requirements were staggering. Every power plant on Earth was being connected to his machine through a network of cables that stretched across continents. The gravitational field generators are online, reported Dr. Carter, but we're already using 60% of Earth's total power output, and we haven't even activated the main device yet. Brooks wiped sweat from his face. "We'll make it work. We have to." Admiral Lisa Chen was coordinating the entire operation from her command center in Colorado. Dozens of screens showed the positions of every human ship, every enemy vessel, and the complex pattern that Jake Morrison had designed. "General Martinez, are the evacuation procedures complete?" she asked. Paul Martinez nodded grimly. "All major cities have been cleared. If this doesn't work, at least the civilian casualties will be minimized." Lisa looked at the master tactical display. Red dots represented Zeltharian ships, blue dots showed human vessels. The pattern was beginning to form, but it would take perfect timing to make it work. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as his plan began to unfold. Every human captain had memorized their exact role. Every pilot knew precisely when and where to attack, when to retreat, and how to make it look convincing. "Ben," signal Captain Walsh. Jake ordered. "It's time for Phase 2. Lieutenant Parker sent the coded message, and immediately the Guardian and her squadron emerged from behind Europa. They attacked the left flank of the Zeltharian formation, their weapons blazing. War Commander Thexus watched the human attacks with growing annoyance. These primitive ships were like insects, buzzing around his mighty fleet and causing minor damage, but their tactics were frustrating. Every time his ships moved to engage them, the humans would retreat in apparently random directions. "Why don't they stand and fight?" asked his tactical officer. Thexus sneered. "Because they're cowards. They know they cannot win, so they waste our time with these pathetic hit-and-run attacks." What Thexus didn't realize was that every random retreat was carefully planned. Each human attack was designed to make his ships turn and move in specific directions. Slowly but surely, the massive Zeltharian fleet was being guided into the formation that Morrison needed. Colonel Adams led his squadron on another attack run, this time targeting ships on the right side of the enemy formation. His fighters darted in, fired their weapons, and retreated toward the asteroid belt. The pursuing Zeltharian ships followed them exactly as predicted. "Beautiful work, Steve," came Morrison's voice over the radio. "You're herding them perfectly." Steve grinned despite the danger. "Just like driving cattle back on the ranch." Captain Walsh's destroyers made another appearance, attacking from a completely different angle. This forced more Zeltharian ships to change course, further distorting their formation. To the enemy commanders, it looked like desperate, uncoordinated attacks by a doomed species. Dr. Brooks activated another section of his device. The power drain was enormous, causing lights to dim across entire continents. But the space-time field generators were working, creating invisible distortions in the fabric of space itself. "Alan, the energy consumption is approaching critical levels," warned Dr. Carter. Brooks nodded. "I know, but we're almost ready. Morrison just needs to get them into position." Amy Rodriguez was monitoring enemy communications from her post on the Guardian. The Zeltharian transmissions were becoming increasingly frustrated as their orderly formation continued to be disrupted by human attacks. "They're starting to bunch up," she reported to Captain Walsh. "Their ships are getting closer, together as they try to protect their flanks." Diana smiled. "Perfect. That's exactly what Morrison wants." The human strategy was working better than anyone had dared hope. The Zeltharian fleet, which had entered the solar system in a disciplined formation covering millions of cubic kilometers, was now being compressed into a much smaller area of space. General Martinez watched the tactical display with amazement. "I have to admit, Morrison's plan looked insane when he first proposed it. But it's actually working." Admiral Chen nodded. "Never underestimate human creativity when we're desperate." Jake Morrison was carefully timing every phase of the operation. His calculations showed that they had about 6 hours before the Zeltharian commanders realized what was happening. After that, the enemy would either retreat or change their tactics completely. "All units prepare for Phase 3, he announced over the general communication channel. "We're about to make this look really desperate." The next phase required every human ship to attack simultaneously from different directions. It would look like humanity's final desperate assault. In reality, it was the most carefully choreographed military maneuver in human history. Colonel Adams led his fighters in what appeared to be a suicidal charge directly at the center of the Zeltharian formation. Captain Walsh brought her destroyers in from the left. Other human squadrons attacked from above and below. To War Commander Thexus, it looked like the humans had finally lost their minds and were throwing everything they had into one last attack. He ordered his ships to close formation and prepare to destroy the human fleet once and for all. It was exactly what Jake Morrison had been waiting for. The Zeltharian ships were now positioned precisely where he needed them, compressed into a relatively small area of space with their formations tightly packed together. Dr. Brooks watched his instruments as the final pieces fell into place. "Admiral Chen," he said over the communication link, "we're ready to activate the main device." Lisa Chen took a deep breath. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Either Brooks' untested weapon would work or humanity would face extinction. Do it, Ellen, she said quietly. The space-time manipulation device hummed to life, drawing more power than any machine in human history had ever used. Across Earth, lights went out as every available watt of electricity was channeled into Brooks' creation. In space, invisible forces began to warp the fabric of reality itself around the Zeltharian fleet. The trap was about to be sprung. War Commander Thexus felt the first hint that something was wrong when his navigation officer reported unusual readings from the sensor array. The human attacks had been getting more desperate over the past few hours, exactly what he expected from a dying species. But now his instruments were showing something that didn't make sense. Commander, our hyperspace drives are showing error messages, the officer reported nervously. Thexus frowned. Hyperspace drives didn't malfunction. The technology had been perfected thousands of years ago. Run a full diagnostic, he ordered. On Earth, Dr. Brooks watched his instruments with growing excitement. The space-time manipulation device was working exactly as his calculations had predicted. Around the Zeltharian fleet, invisible gravitational fields were forming a complex, three-dimensional web that would prevent any faster-than-light travel. The hyperspace inhibitors are at full power, he reported to Admiral Chen. No ship in that area can jump to faster than light speed. Lisa Chen felt a surge of hope. How long can you maintain the field? Brooks checked his power consumption readings. At current levels, maybe 18 hours before we drain every power source on the planet. But that should be enough. Captain Jake Morrison was watching the tactical display when the trap finally revealed itself. One by one, Zeltharian ships tried to activate their hyperspace drives to escape the human attacks. One by one, they failed. Ben, start recording everything, Jake ordered. I want every detail of their reaction documented. Lieutenant Parker activated the recording systems just as panic began to spread through the enemy fleet. Zeltharian commanders were sending increasingly frantic messages to each other as they realized their escape route had been cut off. Colonel Steve Adams pulled his fighter squadron back to a safe distance and watched the alien fleet with satisfaction. Morrison, you magnificent genius. They're trapped like rats in a cage. The Zeltharian ships began to move in different directions, testing the boundaries of whatever was preventing their escape. Each time they tried to jump to hyperspace, their drives would shut down automatically to prevent catastrophic damage. Captain Diana Walsh brought the Guardian closer to observe the enemy formation. What she saw amazed her. The Zeltharian fleet, which had seemed so powerful and organized just hours before, was now in complete disarray. Commander Rodriguez, are you seeing this? Diana asked. Amy Rodriguez was studying her sensor readings with fascination. The enemy formation has completely collapsed. They're moving randomly, trying to find a way out. On his command ship, War Commander Thexus was beginning to understand the horrible truth. The human attacks hadn't been desperate and random at all. They had been carefully planned to guide his fleet into this exact position. Somehow the primitive species he had planned to conquer had trapped his entire force. How is this possible? He demanded of his science officer. The Zeltharian scientist studied his instruments nervously. Sir, the humans appear to have created some kind of gravitational anomaly around our fleet. The space-time distortion is preventing hyperspace travel within a radius of several million kilometers. Thexus felt cold fear creeping into his hearts. No species had ever demonstrated this kind of technology. The Zeltharians had ruled the galaxy for centuries because they possessed the most advanced weapons and the fastest ships. Now they were trapped by creatures they had considered barely civilized. Dr. Brooks was monitoring the enemy fleet's attempts to escape when he noticed something interesting. Admiral Chen, the Zeltharian ships are trying to break free using their conventional drives. Lisa Chen studied the tactical display. The alien ships were accelerating at maximum speed, trying to reach the edge of the gravitational field that held them. Can they escape that way? Brooks smiled. Not a chance. At their current speed, it would take them 3 weeks to reach the field boundary. And that's assuming we don't expand the field, which we can do at any time. General Martinez was coordinating with defense forces around the world as power grids struggled to maintain the energy flow to Brooks's device. Alan, how much longer can we keep this up? The power consumption is stable for now, Brooks replied. but we're using 90% of Earth's total energy output. If any major power plant goes offline, the whole system could collapse. Jake Morrison was preparing for the next phase of his plan when he received an incoming transmission. To his surprise, it was coming from the Zeltharian command ship. "Human Commander," came a translated voice over the communication channel. "I am War Commander Thexus of the Zeltharian Empire. I demand to know what you have done to my fleet." Jake smiled as he activated his response. "Commander Thexus, this is Captain Morrison of the Human Defense Forces. What we've done is demonstrate that intelligence can overcome brute force." There was a long pause before Thexus replied. "This is some kind of trick. No primitive species could possess such advanced technology." "You're right about one thing," Jake said calmly. "We are primitive compared to you. Our ships are smaller, our weapons are weaker, and we have far fewer resources. But we have something you don't seem to understand." "What is that?" Thexus asked, his voice tight with frustration. "Desperation," Jake replied. "When you're fighting for your home, for your families, for your entire species, you find ways to do the impossible." Amy Rodriguez was monitoring communications across the Zeltharian fleet and reporting what she heard to Captain Walsh. "Their commanders are in complete panic. Some of them are demanding immediate retreat, but they can't activate their hyperspace drives." Diana nodded. "How many ships do you estimate are trapped in the field?" Amy checked her sensors. "All of them. Every single Zeltharian vessel in the solar system is caught in Morrison's trap." Colonel Adams was leading his squadron on patrol around the trapped fleet when he noticed something that made him laugh out loud. "Hey Morrison, you need to see this. Some of the enemy ships are actually trying to ram their way out of the field." Jake looked at his tactical display and saw that several Zeltharian cruisers were accelerating at maximum speed toward the edge of the gravitational anomaly. "Let them try. They'll just exhaust their fuel and end up stranded." Dr. Brooks was making adjustments to his device when Dr. Carter brought him some interesting data. "Alan, I'm detecting massive energy buildup in some of the trapped ships. I think they're trying to overload their hyperspace drives." Brooks frowned. "That would be extremely dangerous. If they succeed, the explosion could destroy half their fleet. Should we warn them?" Carter asked. Brooks considered this for a moment. "No. Let them learn the hard way that our trap can't be broken by brute force." Admiral Chen was addressing the world's leaders via secure communication link, explaining the current situation. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to report that Captain Morrison's plan has worked perfectly. The entire Zeltharian fleet is trapped and unable to escape." The President of North America leaned forward on the screen. "What happens now, Admiral?" Lisa Chen looked at the tactical display showing over 3,000 enemy ships caught in humanity's web. "Now we negotiate from a position of strength for the first time in human history." War Commander Thexus was receiving reports from his ship commanders, and each one brought worse news. Several ships had attempted to overload their hyperspace drives and had succeeded only in crippling themselves. Others had tried to break free using conventional engines and were now running dangerously low on fuel. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're receiving a message from Earth. The humans are offering to negotiate." Thexus gritted his teeth. The idea of negotiating with the species he had planned to conquer was humiliating, but he was beginning to realize that he might not have any other choice. Jake Morrison was preparing his next transmission when Ben Parker reported something unexpected. "Sir, I'm picking up long-range communications from the Zeltharian homeworld. It looks like they're sending reinforcements." Jake nodded calmly. "How many ships?" "Preliminary estimates suggest another 2,000 vessels, maybe more." Jake smiled. "Perfect. Admiral Chen is going to love this news." The trap had worked better than anyone had dared hope. But Jake Morrison had planned for every possibility, including the arrival of Zeltharian reinforcements. The real test of human ingenuity was just beginning. Admiral Lisa Chen stood in the main communication center, preparing to address the trapped Zeltharian fleet. Around her, dozens of technicians monitored the gravitational field that held over 3,000 enemy ships in an invisible prison. The next few hours would determine the fate of both species. "War Commander Thexus," Lisa began, her voice being broadcast to every ship in the alien fleet. "I am Admiral Chen of the Human Defense Forces. You have exactly 72 hours to consider our terms for your surrender." The response came quickly, filled with anger and disbelief. "Surrender? You dare demand the surrender of the Zeltharian Empire?" We have ruled this galaxy for over 2,000 years, Lisa smiled calmly. And in all those years, has any species ever trapped your entire invasion fleet using nothing but mathematics and determination? There was a long silence before Thexus replied. What you have done is impossible. Our scientists will find a way to break free from whatever prison you have created. I'm sure they will try, Lisa said. Dr. Brooks, would you care to explain to our guests exactly what they're dealing with? Dr. Brooks activated his communication system from the underground laboratory. Commander Thexus, what you're experiencing is a localized space-time distortion created by manipulating gravitational fields at the quantum level. Simply put, we've created a bubble in space where faster-than-light travel is impossible. The Zeltharian commander's voice was strained. Such technology is beyond your species' capabilities. You're absolutely right, Brooks replied cheerfully. It was beyond our capabilities until about 6 months ago. But humans have a talent for achieving the impossible when our survival depends on it. Captain Jake Morrison was monitoring the enemy fleet's attempts to escape when Lieutenant Parker brought him disturbing news. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting a massive Zeltharian reinforcement fleet. Over 2,000 ships are heading toward Earth. Jake nodded calmly. Expected arrival time? About 60 hours at their current speed, Parker replied. Jake activated his communication link to Admiral Chen. Lisa, it's time to show them the full scope of our preparations. Admiral Chen understood immediately. All stations implement Protocol 7. Show our guests what we've been building in the outer system. Throughout the solar system, hidden human installations began revealing themselves. Massive platforms emerged from behind asteroids, space stations uncloaked near the outer planets, and weapon arrays that had been disguised as mining equipment powered up their systems. War Commander, Thexus watched his sensors in growing horror as human military installations appeared throughout the solar system. How many ships do they have? He demanded of his tactical officer. Sir, I'm not detecting ships. These appear to be fixed installations. But the energy readings suggest they're incredibly powerful. Captain Diana Walsh was commanding one of the newly revealed battle platforms near Saturn. Admiral Chen, Platform 7 is online and ready. Our gravitational field generators can create additional trap zones at 17 strategic locations. Amy Rodriguez was coordinating with similar installations throughout the outer system. All platforms report ready, Admiral. We can trap any reinforcement fleet the moment they enter the solar system. Dr. Brooks was explaining the full scope of humanity's preparations to the stunned Zeltharian commander. You see, Thexus, we've had months to prepare for this moment. Every asteroid mining station, every deep space observatory, every research platform has been converted into a component of our defense network. The alien commander's voice was barely controlled. You're bluffing. No species could build such extensive installations without our knowledge. Really? Jake Morrison interrupted. Ben, show him the tactical display. Lieutenant Parker transmitted a complete scan of the solar system to the Zeltharian fleet. The display showed human installations at every major orbital body, connected by invisible gravitational fields that could trap any ship attempting faster than light. Travel General Martinez was monitoring the approaching reinforcement fleet when he received confirmation of their identity. Admiral Chen, the incoming ships include the Zeltharian Imperial Guard. These are their most elite vessels. Lisa Chen studied the tactical information. How does this change our situation, Jake? Captain Morrison reviewed the data on his screen. It doesn't change anything. Elite or not, they still can't escape a gravitational trap. In fact, capturing their best ships will send an even stronger message to the Empire. Colonel Steve Adams was leading a patrol flight near the trapped fleet when he noticed unusual activity among the enemy ships. Morrison, some of the Zeltharian vessels are powering down their weapons and shields. I think they're starting to understand their situation. Jake nodded with satisfaction. The smart ones are conserving power. They realize this could be a long siege. Dr. Carter was monitoring power consumption from her station in the laboratory. Dr. Brooks, we're maintaining stable power levels. The global energy grid is holding steady. Brooks checked his instruments. Good. We can maintain the gravitational field indefinitely as long as no major power plants fail. War Commander Thexus was receiving increasingly desperate reports from his ship commanders. Some vessels were running critically low on fuel from their failed escape attempts. Others had suffered damage from trying to overload their hyperspace drives. The mighty Zeltharian fleet was becoming helpless. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Imperial capital." Thexus activated the secure channel and found himself face-to-face with Grand Admiral Corex, the supreme commander of all Zeltharian forces. Thexus explained to me how an entire invasion fleet has been captured by a primitive species. The war commander felt his career ending with every word. "Sir, the humans have demonstrated technology that surpasses our understanding. They have trapped our entire force using some kind of space-time manipulation device." Grand Admiral Corex's expression was cold with fury. "Impossible. Our scientists have confirmed that such technology requires energy levels that would drain an entire planet's power grid." "Yes, sir," Thexus replied quietly. "That appears to be exactly what they've done." Admiral Chen was preparing her final ultimatum when she received word that the Zeltharian reinforcement fleet had entered the outer edge of the solar system. "Jake, it's time to spring the second trap." Captain Morrison activated the hidden installations throughout the outer system. "All platforms execute capture pattern. Delta, let's show the Empire what happens when they send reinforcements." The approaching Zeltharian fleet found themselves flying into the same kind of gravitational trap that had captured their advance force. One by one, their ships discovered that their hyperspace drives had been disabled by invisible fields of distorted space-time. Dr. Brooks was monitoring the expansion of his gravitational network when he made an announcement that stunned everyone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we now have over 5,000 Zeltharian ships trapped in our system. That represents approximately 30% of their total military force." The implications were staggering. Humanity had not only defended Earth, they had crippled the galaxy's most powerful empire using nothing but advanced physics and tactical brilliance. General Martinez was coordinating with military leaders around the world as news of the second trap spread. "This changes everything. We're not just defending Earth anymore. We've become a major galactic power overnight." War Commander Thexus received the news that his reinforcements had also been trapped with a sense of complete defeat. The humans had predicted every move, prepared for every contingency, and executed a plan that was militarily perfect. "Admiral Chen," he said over the communication channel, his voice heavy with resignation, "what are your terms for our surrender?" Lisa Chen looked at the tactical display showing over 5,000 trapped enemy ships. "Complete withdrawal from Earth's solar system, formal recognition of human sovereignty, and the establishment of Earth as an independent galactic power." "And if we refuse?" Thexus asked. Dr. Brooks answered that question. "In 68 hours, the gravitational field will collapse suddenly and violently. The space-time distortion will create a quantum implosion that will destroy every ship caught in the trap." The Zeltharian commander was silent for a long moment. "You would destroy 5,000 ships and their crews?" "Only if you force us to," Jake Morrison replied. "We didn't start this war, but we will finish it on our terms." The most powerful military force in the galaxy had been defeated by human ingenuity, and everyone in both fleets knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. War Commander Thexus stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the stars that had once represented the unlimited power of the Zeltharian Empire. Now those same stars seemed to mock him as he prepared to do something no Zeltharian commander had ever done before: surrender to a species they had planned to conquer. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he ordered his communications. Officer Captain Jake Morrison received the transmission on the bridge of the UES Defiance. After 3 days of tense negotiations, the moment he had been waiting for had finally arrived. "Captain Morrison," Thexus began, his voice carrying the weight of defeat, "I formally surrender my fleet to the Human Defense Forces. We acknowledge that your species has achieved what we believed impossible." Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Lieutenant Parker was grinning widely. The other officers showed a mixture of relief and amazement. They had done it. Humanity had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious through pure intelligence and determination. "War Commander, your surrender is accepted," Jake replied formally. "All Zeltharian vessels will power down weapons and prepare for inspection by human forces." Admiral Lisa Chen was coordinating the surrender from her command center on Earth. Around the world, people were celebrating as news of the victory spread, but Lisa knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had suddenly become a major player in galactic politics, and that came with new responsibilities. "General Martinez," Begin deploying our inspection teams to the enemy ships, she ordered. I want a complete inventory of their technology and capabilities. Paul Martinez nodded. Already in progress, Admiral. Our boarding parties are reporting that the Zeltharian crews are cooperating fully. Dr. Brooks was finally able to shut down his space-time manipulation device after 72 hours of continuous operation. The power drain had been enormous, but it had worked perfectly. As the gravitational fields dissipated, the trapped Zeltharian ships found their hyperspace drives functioning normally again. Dr. Carter, begin the technical analysis of what we've accomplished, Brooks said wearily. This technology is going to change everything. Helen Carter was already compiling data from the operation. Alan, the energy efficiency improved by 15% during the final day. I think we can build smaller, more portable versions of the device. Colonel Steve Adams was leading one of the inspection teams aboard a Zeltharian cruiser when he made a discovery that would change his life. The alien ship's computer contained detailed star charts showing the locations of every inhabited world in the galaxy. Morrison, you need to see this, Steve reported over his communication device. We're not just looking at one empire. There are dozens of different species out here, and most of them are under Zeltharian control. Jake studied the transmitted data with growing excitement. Steve, what you're looking at is the key to galactic politics. We now know where everyone lives and how they're connected. Captain Diana Walsh was examining Zeltharian technology aboard another captured vessel when she realized something important. Commander Rodriguez, look at these weapon systems. They're powerful, but they're not actually more advanced than what we could build. Amy Rodriguez studied the alien equipment carefully. You're right. They've been relying on quantity and intimidation rather than superior technology. Their real advantage was just the size of their empire. The implications were staggering. Humanity had been afraid of technologically superior aliens. But the reality was that the Zeltharians had conquered the galaxy through military force and political control, not advanced science. War Commander Thexus was preparing to transmit his final report to the Zeltharian imperial capital when he realized how this defeat would change everything. The Empire's reputation for invincibility was shattered. Every subject species would now know that the mighty Zeltharian fleet could be defeated. Sir, his communications officer reported, Grand Admiral Corex is demanding a full explanation of our surrender. Thexus activated the long-range transmission with heavy hearts. Grand Admiral, the human species has demonstrated tactical and technological capabilities that exceed our own. They have captured over 5,000 of our ships using a weapon we cannot counter. The response from the imperial capital was immediate and furious. Thexus, you will return immediately for court-martial. The Empire does not surrender to primitive species. Sir, Thexus replied quietly. The Empire no longer has a choice in this matter. The humans have proven that intelligence can overcome brute force, Admiral. Chen was meeting with world leaders to discuss humanity's new position in galactic affairs when she received an unexpected communication from an alien species she had never heard of. Before Admiral Chen came a translated voice. I am Ambassador Kellex of the Andronian Republic. We have learned of your victory over the Zeltharians, and we wish to open diplomatic relations with your species. Lisa looked at the communication with amazement. Ambassador Kellex, we would be honored to establish contact with your people. The Androrians are not the only species interested in speaking with you, Kellex continued. Word of your victory is spreading throughout the galaxy. Many worlds that have been under Zeltharian control for centuries are now hoping for liberation. Jake. Morrison was studying reports from all over the galaxy when he realized the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. Their victory over the Zeltharians had triggered a galactic revolution. Subject species everywhere were beginning to rebel against their oppressors. Ben, get me Admiral Chen, Jake ordered. She needs to know that we've started something much bigger than we intended. The communication link opened and Lisa's face appeared on the screen. Jake, I've been getting reports from our deep space monitoring stations. It looks like the Zeltharian Empire is falling apart. It's not just falling apart, Jake replied. It's being torn apart by species that want their freedom. Our victory has shown them that the Zeltharians can be defeated. Dr. Brooks was working on modifications to his space-time manipulation device when he received a visit from several alien scientists who had been aboard the captured ships. They were eager to learn about human technology and to share their own knowledge. Dr. Brooks, said a Zeltharian physicist named Zephyr, What your species has accomplished challenges everything we thought we knew about physics. Would you be willing to collaborate on further research? Brooks looked at the alien scientist with interest. Dr. Zephyr, I think that could be the beginning of a beautiful partnership. 6 months later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of humanity's first interstellar space station. The facility was built using a combination of human and alien technology, representing the new era of cooperation that had emerged from the ashes of the Zeltharian Empire. "Admiral Morrison," came a voice behind him. Jake turned to see Colonel Adams approaching, wearing the insignia of his new rank. "Steve, how are the new recruits adapting to the academy?" Jake asked. Steve smiled. "Better than expected. We have cadets from over 20 different species, all eager to learn human tactical methods." The Galactic Defense Academy had been Jake's idea. Rather than simply celebrating their victory, humanity had decided to share their knowledge with other species. The academy taught advanced tactics and strategic planning, and the kind of creative thinking that had made the impossible victory possible. Admiral Lisa Chen had been appointed as Earth's first galactic ambassador, and she was negotiating treaties with dozens of newly independent worlds. The old empire was being replaced by a federation of free species, with Earth playing a leading role in the new galactic order. Amy Rodriguez had become the Academy's Director of Strategic Studies, teaching young officers from across the galaxy how to think beyond conventional military doctrine. Her classes were always full, as species after species wanted to understand how humans had defeated such overwhelming odds. Dr. Brooks and his international team of scientists were working with alien researchers to develop new technologies based on space-time manipulation. Their discoveries were revolutionizing everything from transportation to communication throughout the galaxy. War Commander. Thexus had chosen to remain on Earth rather than return to face court-martial on the Zeltharian homeworld. He now served as a military advisor, helping human forces understand the political situation throughout the galaxy. His knowledge of Zeltharian tactics and technology had proved invaluable. "Jake," Steve said as they looked out at the stars, "do you ever think about what would have happened if your plan hadn't worked?" Jake Morrison smiled and shook his head. "No point in thinking about that. The plan did work because it had to work. When humans are fighting for their survival, failure isn't an option." Outside the observation deck, ships from dozens of different species moved through space in peaceful cooperation. The galaxy was free, and Earth stood at the center of a new age of exploration and discovery. The Zeltharian Empire had fallen not because of superior firepower or advanced technology, but because one species had refused to accept defeat. Humanity had proven that with enough creativity, determination, and careful planning, even the impossible could be achieved. As Jake watched a group of young cadets from different worlds working together on a training exercise, he knew that the galaxy would never again be dominated by a single empire. The age of cooperation had begun, and it had started with ASI.